Intro students, for the last time, CJ 1100. I'm going to talk to you briefly about corrections, and this will supplement your PowerPoint slideshows as well as your readings in your book. Just going to hit some of the main points. Also, I'm going to leave a video on there that I made last year when I was in South Africa about the future of criminal justice. I think my beard was longer and my hair was shorter, but same person. Some of those predictions I think are coming true, and I'm curious what you think about it if you want to weigh in. Okay, corrections. Corrections is the term we use to describe the end of the criminal justice process. So law makes crimes, creates crimes, right? Lawmakers define things as illegal, serious, and specify different punishments, right? Police investigate crime and interrogate suspects and testify at court, make arrests, right? When the person's arrested, they're brought into the courts, and as you learned, courts determine the legal guilt of a person, not necessarily the factual guilt, because most of the cases are plea bargained, so the guilt's never really absolutely determined in court, but legally guilty, whether through a plea bargain or trial, and then the courts actually carry out, or administer the sentence, give the sentence to the person the type of punishment. Corrections is the final branch in criminal justice, and that's the ones that carry out the sentence of the courts. So corrections is where we punish people. Now, the term corrections, the root word of that is correct, right? And so this is because when you look at the history of corrections in the United States, historically, corrections were about correcting people. It was about rehabilitating people. Even the earliest prisons were aimed at giving inmates the opportunity to express remorse and seek penitence, forgiveness through their God or what have you. That system didn't work out, and it started to break down, and that's why eventually we developed the types of prisons we have now, where people can actually talk to each other and interact. As bad as that has been, and as much violence and that sort of thing as it can create. The fact that we kept people in isolation is one of the reasons why we don't do it anymore, because it didn't work. Okay, so corrections is the final result of criminal justice, and it's the way we punish people in the United States. We obviously want to achieve retribution or justice for crime victims by doing this, but primarily what it's for is incapacitating offenders. Whether you're held in a prison or a jail, or even if you're just on probation, your freedom is somewhat incapacitated, and so ideally you can't commit more crime. We also ideally want to deter people from committing crime, but you already learned that that's not effective. Prison and jail is not effective because the most important element of punishment to deter is certainty of punishment, and prison and jail is not certain at all, right? So here's what we know about corrections. You have two major forms. You have institutional corrections and you have community corrections. Institutional corrections are correctional facilities that house inmates in institutions. So primarily you're talking about jails and prisons. Community corrections is where your punishment is served in the community rather than in an institution under certain restrictions or guidelines, rules like probation. Okay? So I looked up some of the recent numbers. These are the most recent numbers I could find. Community corrections is 4.5 million Americans. Okay, that includes 3.7 million in probation, another 875,000 on parole. Okay, probation is a sentence of the court. It's punishment in place of prison or jail. You're going to serve your time under supervision. Parole is not a sentence of the court. That's what happens to you when you get out of prison, when you're released. You're still supervised by officers, by parole officers. In institutional corrections, you have 2.2 million people. This includes 1.5 million in prison, another 740,000 in jail. Of that 1.5 million, about 1.3 million of those are held in state prisons. The other 200,000 are held in federal prisons. Again, there's more laws on the books in the states. There's more crimes at the state level. There's 50 states, only one federal government. So that's why there's so many more people in state prisons. What's the difference between a prison and a jail? A jail is meant to hold people for a sentence of a year or less. Prison is for a year or more. Okay. Jails are operated by cities and counties, and prisons are operated by state governments and the federal government. Okay. Those are the main differences. The other difference is in jail, you also have people awaiting trial who are not convicted of anything. You also have people who've been convicted but are waiting sentencing and transferred to another institution like a prison. Then you have people who are homeless, mentally ill, people that were picked up on the street drunk. So it's a whole hodgepodge of different kinds of people. Prison is organized by level of severity of crime, by threat level, by likelihood of escape, minimum, maximum, medium security. You'll see in your notes even supermax prisons, which are the worst of the worst. These are not nice places. There's a myth that prisons are like Holiday Inns, but you'll see in your notes there's a wide range of pains of incarceration, pains of imprisonment associated with being locked up. You lose your freedom. So anything you like to do for fun, you can't do that in prison. I like to have a beer after mowing the grass. I like to go for a hike, jump in a waterfall. Can't do that in prison. I like to walk my dog. Can't do that in prison. I like to go hang out with my friends. Can't do that in prison. Within reason. You also lose your autonomy, the ability to govern yourself. You become a number. You lose all your goods and services. There's a threat of violence and sexual assault and that sort of thing. It disrupts your life. You lose your family. You lose access to your loved ones. So it's not a nice place. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for these people, but 90% of them will one day be released, as you see in your notes. And so you should be concerned what happens to them in prison because they will come back to our community. Okay? So that's a real quick rundown of American corrections. Some other things you need to know. We're #1 in the world in the number of people we incarcerate. Not only the rate of incarceration, which is the number of people per 100,000, we have more people in prison even than much larger countries. We're #1. That's not a result of more crime. It's a result of policy choices at the state and federal level to get tough on crime, starting in the 1970s, in particular the 1980s. So we started incarcerating more people. We started incarcerating people for longer sentences. We started making it harder to get out of prison by abolishing parole and passing truth in sentencing laws. We have to serve at least 85% of your sentence. 3 strikes laws were upon conviction for your 3rd felony, you go to prison for life. These are why we have so many people in prison, okay? Obviously, we're trying to change that. It's now viewed by both liberals and conservative as a waste of money, as an ineffective crime control tool. So you'll see interest groups on the left and the right, Democrat and Republican, that are working to de-incarcerate, to let more people out of prison. President Obama did things to try to improve reentry from prison to society and to make less people go to prison, and so has Donald Trump in terms of the Second Chance Act, if you're interested in that. Okay, that's a quick rundown of corrections. If you have any questions, please contact me. We can Zoom, we can talk via email, what have you. And don't forget your final exam and last assignments are due on Friday. All right, peace.